Okay, I'm going to talk. I don't think it'll even take till 11 o'clock today. Um, we're continuing on in this project that we've been working on, so if you do want to go out to the P drive for the class, you know the drill. There is a folder out there with today's date on it that you can go and copy in. We're going to look at a little bit of jQuery today and get to a certain point, and then on Thursday, we're going to take the jQuery and implement it into the actual website that we've been working on. And next week, I'm going to add the Ajax component, and that'll be it. So I will lecture for an hour today, an hour Thursday, an hour next Tuesday, and an hour next Thursday. That's the plan. And after that, the last, 6, 7 weeks, whatever it is, of class is all going to be lab for you to be able to work on the project. All right. If you still have not turned in your write-up for what you're doing your project on, please get it in to me. All right, there's still 1 or 2 people who have not turned it in yet, so I'd appreciate it if you do that as soon as possible. That folder has about 6 examples in it, and that's what we're going to be going over today. Many of the examples that are in here are fairly simplistic, but they're to get you back in vogue, so to speak, to remember how to do jQuery again. All right. So there it is. And I've already got jQuery up and, or not jQuery, I've already got XAMPP up and running, so if you do want to follow along, fine. But if you take a look up on the screen here, you'll see these are the examples that we're going to be going over today. First, a simple jQuery example, then another example that goes over the this selector, then a real simple add remove, then a more advanced add remove, then some drag and drop, and then finally we'll start to get into using Ajax for updating the database, although it's not really doing that. That's not a great name for it. If you'll notice in here, one of the things, and I didn't create this, somebody else has created a jQuery plugin that when you go and do drag and drop, it puts things in ascending order, which is what I want. So I went out and downloaded jQuery.tinysort.min.js, so that's in here. And that'll come into play when we get into, I think it's the 5th one. Also, what I did was, originally writing these, I wrote them the bad way. I wrote them all obtrusively. In other words, originally, in one file, I had, if there was, I put the CSS, the HTML, and the JavaScript in one file. Okay? Then I broke them up. But for some reason, when I did this last one, I can get it to work when I put it all into one file, but when I break it up into 3 different files, it doesn't work right. So I left both of them in there so you can see everything that's in there. All right? Okay. So again, and while we do this too, what I want to do is I also want to bring up the code for each one of these. In fact, I don't think I have to do it like this. I think I've got it over here. Yep, that's it. So if you do open this up, this is what it says. So this is our fourth iteration. We've done part 1, part 2, part 3, and now we're on part 4. And part 4 has, basically, there's nothing to do with the website until we get to the last script that's in here. All right? So if you look here, here's the first one, and we'll run it in just a second. But again, I'm trying to get you back into the mindset where you sort of remember this stuff that we talked about before. All right? Get rid of that and that. Get rid of that. Start here. All right. If you remember when you use jQuery, a couple things. Okay, first of all, when you use it, you've got your choice. You can either copy jQuery right into the folder that you're working with or into another folder if you want to do that, or you can do what I've done, and that is copy it from a CDN, a content delivery network. All right, so this is going to go out to Google and do this. The recommendation by people who work in jQuery is that you do it this way and not copy it in yourself. All right, now the reason for doing it like this is there's at least a pretty good chance that if somebody has been doing some work where they've been going out to sites, they may already downloaded jQuery and it may be cached on their site itself. So it's going to be less stress on the server, faster reaction time, etc. But if I do this, see that? Everybody see that line in gray? What's something that could totally screw that up? You should know this because we went over this a couple semesters ago. What that line right there, I'll give you a hint. It comes after the source statement. What do I need for that to work? No. An internet connection. So if I don't have an internet connection, I'm hosed doing it this way. All right, so if the internet goes down, so sometimes what people do is they actually do copy over the newest copy of jQuery and put it in a folder someplace and check to see whether or not they've got an internet connection. And if they do, they use this. Otherwise, they use their local copy. The problem with doing it that way, all right, if I go out to, I can just literally type in Google jQuery CDN and it'll bring me right to this. Okay? But if I do it the other way where I'm copying it in, then I've always got to worry about having the latest and greatest version if I've got my own copy and keeping that up to date. And a lot of people just don't like to go through the grief of doing that. So they do it this way. Remember that what we're going to do is we're going to write our own JS file, and that JS file will depend on jQuery. So we have to have the jQuery script line in there first before we have in our local one. That should make sense to all of you. The interface on this is unbelievably simple. There's a button on it that says, click me. Okay, that's it. All right. And since there's only one button, I didn't even name it. We could have named it. We could have given it an ID. We could have done a lot of other good stuff, so to speak, but I didn't. All right. So if you look, everything that's going to happen is going to happen when you click that button. And what's the magic? Well, it's right there. Remember this? Kind of ugly. And it's some, hopefully that you at least brings back some memories, even if they're bad ones, all right, of stuff that we've done previously. Everything that you do in jQuery basically is going to be in this document ready function. All right, and remember the goofy syntax. That paren that you see right there is closed at the very end. The curly that you see right there is closed right before the paren. So in other words, that's the beginning of the block right here, and that's the end of the block right there. And what we're saying here is, okay, I've got a button here. When I click that button, I want this function to run. And when this function runs, two things are going to happen. I'm going to grab the whole body, and I'm going to use CSS to set the background color to red. Again, that should make sense to everybody just taking a quick look at this. Then, on the button itself, I'm going to change its text. Remember, it just said submit on it. The text should now say, nice red background. Does all that make sense? Now, if I want to, I can run this, as you'll see right here. If I want, I can run it from right here. There it is. Click me. Nice red background, and it changes to red. Everybody see that? But I think you all know this already, that I can literally come in and run this. I don't need a server connection for this. All right, because I'm working with client stuff right now. So I can grab it from here also, and I get the same results. Does all that make sense to everybody? Again, that was just meant to be in there kind of like as a review type of thing. All right, and I know it's been a while. Now we could toggle this if we wanted to. We could add a toggle class in there, so if we clicked it again, this would go back to submit, and that would go back to being white. All right, if we wanted to do that. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this. All right, so that's the first one. And I'm just going to keep going. If somebody has a question I'm going to take for granted, you're going to ask. All right, next example. This, using the keyword this. Make that a little smaller so you can see all of it. All right. So, pretty simple. We've got a paragraph in here that says add to favorites. Right now, that's all that's in there is just a paragraph. Notice there's a class associated with a paragraph, but we don't even care about that right now. That's what should show on the screen. Just the words add to favorites. All right? But since we have set up a class with it, if we go over and look at our JavaScript, well, what we're saying is when you click that paragraph, change the text that's in there, which currently says add to favorites, change it to remove from favorites. Okay, does that make sense? So when we run this and we click on that paragraph that says add to favorites, it should change to remove from favorites. Now, a couple things about this. First thing, this is one way right now. In other words, if I click it again, it's not going to go back again to add to favorites. We'll add that in a later iteration. Okay? The other thing, too, is right here, if you see this, I'm going to move this over so you can see. That line right there and that right there are identical to one another. Remember that since I'm going to be using add to favs, and I could say add to favs again in here, but we already did it. The system already knows what we're working with. All right, we're working with a class called add to favs. So if we use this, it's a shortcut. It's less stress on the server. It's supposed to load faster. But either one of these would work. In fact, just to prove that, what I'll do is I'll take this one, comment it out, and uncomment out the other one. Well, got to get shortcut 4 out of there. All right, then I'll come back to here. And you notice it changes to remove from favorites. It worked just fine. Again, add to favorites, click on it, remove from favorites. All right? But again, that's considered a poor way of doing this. You aren't supposed to go and repeat this stuff. Because, as mentioned, it's putting undue stress on the server. So you're better off writing it like this, using the word this. All right, so again, when I run this, it should react the exact same way. In other words, when I click on the paragraph that says add to favorites, it changes. You make me a liar, thank you. Well, let's see what it was originally. I screwed up. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you are right. There you go. See, it's a review for all of us. All right. There you go. But again, it's one way, the way that it currently is. Okay, so it just that one time, okay, it puts it in there. And if I hadn't taken the time to show you that, we probably wouldn't have had any problems with it, but I want to make sure you understand what's happening in there. Everybody cool with that? All right. So that's the first 2 examples. All right. Then onward and upward. Add remove class dynamic handler. So let's look at this one. And thank you for the advice. All right. This looks exactly the same as what we had last time, except it's a different script that we're running. But everything else is exactly the same as the last time you saw it. Add to favorites. But now notice what we're doing. All right? So right now, if it says, basically what's going to happen is if we click and it says add to favorites, we're going to change the text to remove to favorites, and now we're going to tell it basically to add the class remove from favs. In other words, the only difference between this example and the previous one is now when it says add to favorites and we click it and it says remove from favorites and we click it again, it goes back and says add to favorites. Does that make sense? All right, let's run it and come back and we can take a look at the code some more if you want to. And that's exactly what we want to have happen when you think about it, because remember, in the program that we're working on in this website, what we want to do is we want to be able to click, and it'll be a heart icon. So if that's in their non-favorites and we click the heart icon, it puts it in their favorites. But in the same token, when we take something that's in their favorites and we drag it to the trash can, we want it to disappear from their favorites and make it appear on the right in their things that aren't favorites. So that's why I'm showing it to you like this. There are other ways that this could be done. And I'm not even going to say this is the best way or this is the, you know, honest to goodness, it doesn't pay to even say something like that. All right. I know Micah, who sits over here, and some of you know Micah. He's one of the first-year students. He's very inquisitive. He's very bright. All right. But he'll always ask almost all the time in class, well, which way which way should it be done? You know, when I go and tell you something, if I answer a question like that, oh yeah, that's the way it should be done, but that's according to me. You know what I'm saying? And you could bring somebody else in here who knew as much as I did, more than I did, or less than I did, and they could say, oh no, you should do it this way. And I could give my arguments, and they could give their arguments, and we could both be right. All right? So again, you could be using toggle class in here. There's different ways that this could be done. And again, I'm not saying that this is the only way or it's the best way. It's probably the most straightforward way of doing it. And remember, do you remember this? Dot here, dot here, dot here. We're all operating on the same thing. Dot here, dot here, dot here. Remember what that's called? Not all at once. That's chaining. Because I could, you know, it's okay to put it on a new line, but I could have just typed it all in one line. This dot text, add to favorites, dot remove class, remove from favs, dot add class, add to favs. But we didn't have enough room to show it on the screen, unless I would have made it really small. All right. So again, in English, what we're saying is, if it currently says add to favorites, change it to remove from favorites. And if it currently says remove from favorites, change it to add to favorites. This has got a little bit of CSS in it, not a lot. Okay, but a little bit, just so you see that. A little bit more jQuery, but that's all of it right there. Right now, there's 2 movie lists. Okay, and the one on the left will say 1, 2, 3, and the one on the right will say 4, 5, 6. That all should make sense. And you'll notice this is the one where that tiny sort has been added. Why? Because the idea is when I run this, if you don't put the tiny sort or something like that in there, if I click 1 right now, the idea is this list over here should now say 1, 4, 5, 6. But if I don't have the tiny sort and I click 1 here, this will now say 4, 5, 6, 1. Pretty simple as far as what the difference is. So notice if I click and click and click, everything's in the right order. If I start doing the same kind of stuff over here, all right, again, does that pretty much make sense as far as what's going on? And this is very, very simplistically done. Again, not the only way necessarily it could be done, but when you look at this, it's just basically built. They're just basically built as an LI. All right. And Travis, I don't know if you're the one who asked this the other day, but if you look right here, what this line is doing, right now this says like movies _1, movies _2, etc. What we're doing right there is we're saying, okay, we got an underscore. We want you to use that as a split. So now the word movies, it puts it in an array. The word movies is an element 0, and the thing that comes after it is an element 1. All right? So by using element 1 right here, I'm just grabbing the number. And that's good because when I do a sort, I only want to sort on a numeric field. All right? It wouldn't make much sense to go and sort on an alphabetic field. Okay. And what we're saying here is, okay, if they're in the favorite list, then we want to put them in the non-favorite list. Otherwise, they're already in the non-favorite list, so we want to put them in the favorite list. Then we remove it from where it is, and add it to where it's going, and then tell it to be sorted. Again, does that pretty much make sense? All right. And for anybody who says to me, because I hear this, well, yeah, it makes sense when you do it right there. All right. It's like anything else. You just got to practice and practice and practice. In a way, and I'm not saying this at all to be mean. I'm really not. But I know Dwan here, and there's other people who are in the class this semester with Jim. And I asked a couple people, how's it going? You know, there's no slam on Jim or anything, but what they said to me was, Jim's a really good guy, and he's learning it along with us. Well, you know what that's like, because I'm learning swing along with you. You know, so you know what that kind of thing is like, and it's tough the first time anybody does that. All right? All right. Then the next example, let me show you the one that works. Okay, so the idea is, when you look over here, spell favorites wrong. Make sense as far as what's going on? Now, this isn't set up right now that if there are no favorites, the garbage can goes away. That wouldn't be that hard to implement. All right? But again, you'll notice, boom, and as you remove movies, it just slides everything that's down below up, and it slides the garbage can up too. All right? I could get that to work just fine until I tried to put it into 3 different files. And I must have spent a good half an hour going over these. I can drag it, and it just stays there. So whatever it is, I'm sure it's very simple. I was proud of myself today, and honest to goodness, I don't normally say this. I'm doing the lectures right now for Chapter 8 in the Swift class. The author has a mistake in the book. I went online to try to figure out what his problem was, and I couldn't. You know, I'd Stack Overflowed it, and finally I just started making some changes myself, and I got it to work. I was amazed. All right? But if you watch the first 2 lectures, which are the only ones out there right now for Chapter 8, it looks like neither of the first 2 programs work. Well, now they will. And when I finish the lecture tomorrow, hopefully I'll finish it tomorrow, for Chapter 8, then all of them will be in there and they'll all work. All right. So let's take a look at this. And we'll look at the way that it's supposed to be. Even though it doesn't work, that's fine. Okay? Now, this is the same stuff that you saw before. The only thing that's new is the trash stuff. We're using that sprite, sprites.ping, because that just gives us the little picture of the trash can. Okay, and this is setting up where it's positioned, etc. And this is where, when we're hovering over it, that's all. So we come in here, and you'll notice now we have just one movie list. We don't have 2 of them anymore. All right, in this example, when we're dragging it, we're not moving it from one to the other. We're just putting it in the garbage, period. So this is very similar to what you saw last time. There isn't anything in here right now. We're not doing anything with sorting or anything like that. All right. So again, all the code is here, and the good news is, try to make these small enough that you could see what was happening on one screen. All right. And now that I look at it, this may be what the problem is, right here, with a droppable. I don't know. I may have to put that in here also. What happens when you don't use, what a clone does is it makes a copy. All right? And the way that stuff works with the internet, especially if you come in there and, like, if I run this, and I start coming, you know, I'm a real jerk, and I start doing this, etc. Let's grab the one that, let me use the one that works. This one, I'm not that fast and I'm not that dexterous. All right? But what you find out if you don't use a clone or a copy of this, what'll happen is you're working faster than the system can answer what it is you're trying to do. So stuff gets screwed up. So what you end up doing in here is you end up working, for lack of better words, you clone it so you work with a copy. It still removes it. It still does what you want it to do, but it allows the system to keep up with whatever it is you're trying to do. All right? And I'd have to look at that to see if I needed a helper over there also. I don't know. You know, I can try it, but probably what I'll do is rather than help, I'll probably screw it up. Try changing it around. I don't want to sit there and try to debug this stuff in front of you. All right. So I'm going to go back and change that to the way it was. In fact, I'll try one last thing, but I still don't think that's it either. Okay. But like I said, the one that's called test.html, where it's done all by itself, that one works. So I don't know what the difference is. It's probably something simple that I just overlooked, but if you see it and you want to let me know, fine. All right, and there's just one more. Let's run it first. This one is going to use Ajax. This one we need to run from the server. All right, so why? Well, let me show you. If I come in here and I try, remember it's an index.php file. So if I bring it up and try to run it, yeah, it's going to bring it up, and basically it's just going to show me the stuff on the page. All right, let's just go over to here. So I could have come back and I could have run any one of these first 5 scripts from here. It wouldn't have mattered. Because you know as well as I do that example run HTML files just fine. All right, but this one, I need it. And again, I ran this one for you already, but kind of quickly. So all this does is it moves stuff from one side to the other. So you can see where we're going with this. All right, we'll add the code next time, because what this is doing is it's basically doing what we want it to do, except now when we do this, this isn't doing anything. And notice what happens when I try to, I'll move that no. That stuff hasn't been implemented yet. That'll be the stuff that's in the lecture for Thursday. All right. So if we look at that, there's more files. There's our CSS. This is all the stuff that we've looked at before, the show movies, etc. That. We've looked at all this stuff. All right, we've looked at that. So let's just take a look at the index file. All right. So we got our files that we're requiring in here. I guess that's not the one that I want to show you. Okay. This is where we're going to go to on Thursday. Again, we come in here and we're grabbing, instead of just movies, we want just the number, etc., or whatever it is we want to do. And right here is where we'll have to add all the code, where it says Ajax here. Now, just a couple things, and we're just going to call it a period. All right, first of all, when you're working with PHP and you're working with Ajax and you're working with jQuery, technically, jQuery and PHP can't talk to one another. Does that make sense to you? Because jQuery is a server-side product, and jQuery is a client-side product, and PHP is a server-side product. So the way they basically are going to communicate with one another is through Ajax calls. Okay? And just a couple things, because I've been doing a lot of reading on stuff like this. All right, first of all, if you may or may not have noticed, this is called addfabs.js, and there's removefabs.js. All right, but if we look here, JavaScript doesn't care if the variables that you create start with a $sign. Sometimes people don't like to do that because they're like, wait a minute, I want my PHP variables, I want to know their PHP, and those are the only ones that start with a dollar sign. And other people feel just the opposite. All right, I just kept them, I started these with a dollar sign. All right. And if we look over here, this is the same one that we looked at in the last one, basically. All right, except we have to add the Ajax. So that's what we're going to do on Thursday. We'll come back and we'll make sure that when we run this and we start moving the stuff over, we're able to click here and drag and move it into here, and it goes away. We're able to click here and we put it over there. Does all that make sense? All right. And if you look right now notice if I come and start doing this, this is not in alphabetic order. And I don't think that it will be on Thursday either. So if you want to get into alphabetic order, all you have to do is modify the query to do an order by, right? I mean, everything else is fine. So it depends. I'm not trying to be funny here. It depends on how anal you are. Because if you want to let a person keep adding movies, do you want to show the original order in which they had and let them add them, or do you want them always to be in alphabetic order? All right? So that'd be up to you as far as how you would implement that. Okay? So we went through about a half dozen fairly simplistic examples today. All right? First, just to bring us back to the days of jQuery, then to talk about the this selector. All right. Then we did the add remove, that when it was one way, we could click on it, would change from add to remove, but it wouldn't change back. Then we added the functionality where it went back and forth. Then we started to add the functionality to allow our trash can to work. And then this last one is going to allow us to move from one side to the other, from our favorites to our non-favorites. I guess our non-favorites to our favorites is what it is. All right. Questions on that? So we will add that stuff. There'll be just a couple scripts, but we'll talk about that on Thursday. Then next week we'll dive into whatever's left, and that'll be it for here. All right. So there'll be part 5 will be out here on Thursday. Part 6 will be out here next Tuesday. Part 7 will be out here next Thursday, and that's it. All right, so what that says is we will be done by April 2nd, so you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks to work on a project. All right, I've already been asked by a couple of employers, are you going to have that thing again where people are going to present projects, because I'd like to come. And that's good when they contact me as opposed to me having to contact them. Seriously. And last year I invited the president of the college, a couple of the vice presidents, my dean, the associate dean. All right, and last year one of the vice presidents came and stayed for the whole thing. Another vice president came, but he could only stay for about half because he had another meeting. My dean came, the associate dean came, and there were probably about half dozen people who were external people who came. And also I'm going to open it up so if any of the first year people want to come, they're able to come. Now, when you do this, you know, again, this is quite a ways up. I get it's about 7 weeks from Thursday. And I'm just saying this. I mean, if you want to come in here and dress the way you always dress, that's totally up to you. You're not hurting my feelings. I know that Denny and Arinda, when Denny has students do these presentations, part of your grade is on how you dress. Literally, you're expected. Guys are supposed to wear a suit coat. Women either a blazer or a skirt or a nice dress pants, etc. The way I look at it is like this. You are auditioning for a possible future job. Whether you agree with that or not, that's the way I look at it. So my feeling is that you'll want to come in here and you'll want to be somewhat dressed up. But again, if you disagree with that, then you disagree with that. It was about half and half last year. A couple of people really dressed up. One person I never seen dressed up had a sport coat on. I was kind of surprised. All right, but Steve, did you dress up?
I think up until the 5 times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Button-up shirt, long sleeve, dress green.
questions? All right, that's it. The rest of the period's lab. Oh, let me ask you before we do. Okay, I'm just starting to grade the swing. I've graded the end right. The stuff's out there. Now, to my knowledge, no one in the class has finished both assignments. Everybody just about has finished the first assignment, which was the miles per gallon, and then the other one, some people did the car loan things, a lot of people did the BMI. Either way, it's fine. And most everybody, not everybody, but most everybody upgraded or updated like the BMI one. You added a seek bar or a couple seek bars, etc. Okay? But no one has done the state one. Do you want to go on today to the next chapter, or do you want another day of lab? You want more lab? All right. Then we'll plan on next Tuesday. We'll go. I mean, I'm ready. I've got my notes. I've got all my stuff here. The stuff's actually out there. There's a folder out there with today's date on it. So I'll just change the date on that, and we'll just we'll go over chapter 7 next week then. All right? And I am going to go through an example in the swing class today, or the iOS class, Mac class, whatever you want to call it. We're going to build a simple program as a class. Then I'll show you another example of it that someone else did, where they did functionality I didn't put in, but I put in functionality they didn't put in. All right? So we'll go through that today. I don't know if it'll take more than an hour, but it'll probably take at least an hour to go through that.